to talk weed, which is a fun topic in Vancouver. So specifically here, what we're talking about is medical marijuana profitable opportunities. And I think for many of us, that's problematic because we see a lot of marijuana companies that are in the space that may not be very profitable at all. What I've been trying to do at Stockhouse for the last 3 months is cover the sector on a daily basis with a view to not necessarily promoting the sector, but to take the sector to task whenever it doesn't match up to what it should, which has been pretty easy. It's kind of basically been shooting fish in a barrel to this point. There's been various companies that I've written about that CEOs have threatened lawsuits and investors have found my Twitter feed and tried to figure out where I live. But basically what we find with the space is a lot of companies who believe that they can be the corporate version of the Hells Angels and haven't necessarily put in a lot of thought into what the profitable opportunity is in that space. So what we wanted to do here is to not say, yeah, everyone, let's get green, but basically go into the nitty-gritty of the industry, what people should be looking at when they decide to invest in medical marijuana. Is there a good profitable opportunity there, and is it the things that we see shooting up 600% on a daily basis? So on the panel today, we have Jody Emery in the middle from Cannabis Culture. The Emery surname may be one that is familiar with a few people who have an interest in medical marijuana. We'll let her talk a little bit about that as we go. We also have Daniel Kieselbach from Deloitte Tax Law. We also have James West from Midas Letter. And at the very end, Paul Pelosi. Paul's associated with a company in the US, and you may also recognize that surname. We'll let that slide through. So what I wanted to do is to just open up with each of these esteemed individuals and get their take on how they see the marijuana space, be it in Canada, the US, or otherwise. And let's start off with James from the Midas Letter.
Okay, well, I guess in a nutshell, my impression of the medical marijuana space in Canada is from the standpoint of an investor, is that one should be extremely skeptical and cautious going forward. I mean, the Canadian medical marijuana trade is predicated on the basis that we have 38,000 registered users with Health Canada who the federal government is trying to force to buy their medical marijuana from a current roster of 13 licensed commercial growers, arguably with a total of 22 licensed growers coming this year, who each in their business plans predict that they will realize a price of $8 per gram. And of the 38,000 currently registered users, probably 25,000 of them have been on disability and paying less than $1 a gram from compassionate growers and suppliers. And so there's a huge disconnect between the reality and what is being projected. And I think that for traders, there are great opportunities for the mining companies that are raising money at sub 5 cents. And if you can get out in the enthusiasm that's taking it over 10 cents briefly before what is surely going to happen, a crash back down to a half cent, then as a trader, you can make some money. And that is a profitable opportunity. However, as an investor, I don't believe that opportunity is going to exist, and that we're going to see a very slow and consistent degradation of the sector as a whole, and companies will start to disappear just like mining companies are disappearing now.
So one of my discussion points when I'm talking to people who are in management with medical marijuana companies is if they start to refer to themselves as the medical marijuana sector, I generally pull them up and say, look, if you're growing, you're agricultural. If you're about distribution, you're retail. If you're looking at tech, you're tech. Like, there's no institution I know who's going to dump $100 million into the medical marijuana sector, but they'll go into the tech sector, they'll go into health, they'll go into all these other sorts of things. How do you see that playing out? Do you think that this is actually going to be a sector in a year's time?
Well, I think that the medical marijuana, sort of the advent of medical marijuana is the precursor to the legalization of marijuana, and for what it actually has been for many decades, if not hundreds of years in the human race, which is a cultural accessory. And so, you know, there has been a sector for many years. It's been illegal, it's been criminal, and now, you know, finally we're coming to our senses. Is it a sector? It has been a sector, but it is a commodity crop, And ultimately, the same rules of marketing and selling commodities applies to the marijuana sector. So absolutely, it is a sector.
Let's move to Jody, who I guess is counting down the days right now. You've got a fairly significant milestone coming forward. Why don't you tell us about that?
Well, I should let you know my husband is Mark Emery, known as the Prince of Pot, the Canadian who sold millions and millions of dollars of marijuana seeds through the mail to Americans and people around the world to finance political reform through ballot initiatives throughout numerous U.S. states, lobbyist groups, court challenges, political campaigns, all sorts of different activism, and known for giving away every dollar. The Drug Enforcement Administration admitted that they tracked all of his money. It was all used for political purposes, but that's why he was targeted and charged with conspiracy charges for having never left Canada, never went to the U.S., faced life in prison for financing the marijuana legalization movement as stated explicitly by the DEA on the day of his arrest in a press release. That's widely known. So Mark is a capitalist. He's always enjoyed making money, but it's always been for financing different activist groups, different campaigns. Sunday shopping, for example. In Ontario, you can shop on a Sunday because Mark did that, and you can buy rap records in Canada because Mark financed that. So when I think of the marijuana industry, Mark and I are all for it. We're all for growing pot and selling it. I've never done that myself. He didn't do that either. He was about seeds. But when you're talking about money and marijuana, there's more than just the billions of dollars we can make. There's the billions of dollars being spent, tax dollars, destroying lives. There's the human cost. And the human cost is unaffordable. You cannot put a number on it. You can't put a number on the lives that are ruined, on the lost potential of people who could have gone on to do great things, but a criminal record prevented them from doing so. So marijuana is worth a lot of money because it's illegal, because of the risk involved, but right now we're still seeing an approximate price of $10 a gram, which is a prohibition price that should be much lower. However, we're not going to see that as long as it's still illegal. Medical marijuana is not full legalization, therefore the prohibition prices remain in place because supply and demand say that there's not enough supply to meet the demand. When you go to places like California or others, of course, there's huge supply. The price should be lower, but because it is still illegal and there's still risk involved, the price remains high. So for me, when I look at this industry ahead, I'm all for decrim, I'm all for medical marijuana. I support Health Canada's new program in that it allows businesses to produce and sell marijuana to a wide range of people, but until it's legal for all adults, until no one gets arrested for any pot possession, it's not going to be the fair or just marketplace that we need. It's not going to be a free marketplace. And again, tax dollars will continue being wasted, destroying lives, and those are potential customers, so why arrest them when really they should be able to buy your pot instead? So yay for money, yay for jobs, but when you think of the cost, let's talk about the human cost, and when you think about where you want to put your dollars in the new industry or industries that are emerging, try to support those businesses that promise to campaign to change the laws so that nobody gets arrested for pot.
I would imagine that when Mark gets out in a month's time, that he's going to be the prettiest girl at the party all of a sudden, that all these companies are going to be looking for a consultant that can move some share price. Has there already been sniffs in that direction?
Oh, I've been receiving plenty of messages from people asking me where should I put my millions of dollars, asking me where can I get millions of dollars, asking me where should we go, what should we do. I should state that I am a business owner, I have 28 people on payroll, but we don't deal with marijuana and we don't deal with seeds. That ended in 2005 with the DEA coming into Canada and arresting Mark and shutting down the business. But I run a head shop, so you can buy vaporizers, shirts, anything with a pot leaf on it. And I run a vapor lounge where for $5 you get access to use marijuana in a nice space, 2 floors. We've got great windows. It's a lovely spot down on Hastings County. Great historical building too for those visiting Vancouver. But my point is that I'm able to employ a lot of people in the marijuana industry without actually dealing with marijuana itself. So Mark and I have been able to demonstrate over the years that you can still finance a business, you can pay taxes, you can give all your money to different causes just through marijuana-related businesses, not through marijuana itself. So yeah, we've got a lot of people saying we should sell seeds, we should sell weed, but I gotta tell you, I'm a little nervous when a foreign government for your man with life in prison. I don't think he'll be selling seeds again, but we'll be happy to endorse companies that are making money in an ethical way, and that just means making sure nobody gets arrested or goes to prison, and that they campaign for no more prison for anybody.
I feel like I've been threatened with life in prison every time I've gone down to Trader Joe's, so I understand exactly what you're doing. Let's move on to Daniel. In terms of making money in this space, it's interesting to hear that the Prince of Pot and Associates is looking to make money around marijuana instead of setting up massive growers and trying to be farmers. What are you seeing in the more general financing space in terms of where this thing's going?
Well, I'm a lawyer with Deloitte Tax Law, and I have contacts within the Deloitte environment. And I guess Deloitte is the leading go-to-market company at this point in time in providing advice. There are maybe 4 to 5 licensed producers that were assisted by Deloitte. And there are opportunities, at least at this point in time, for making money. Tweed is one example of a company that Deloitte assisted, and it went on the TSX. I think it was 113 million cap, and its price went up. I think it was 183% in the first day. So I would echo the comments that were made earlier that there's reason for caution. You have to do the rigorous analysis. What is your break-even point? What is your profit going to be? Who is your market? Figure out the transportation costs and all that wonderful stuff. But there are people that are looking at this very aggressively, and they're not unsophisticated people. They're Bay Street types, there's financiers, there's heads of military, former premiers. There are a lot of people that are getting into this space. So there is, I guess, quite a bit of optimism about how much money there can be made. Right now, the optimism is reflected in the amount of applications that have been received. There's, as I understand it, 850 applications that were filed. 149 were refused because they just didn't meet the test of completeness. 30 were withdrawn, so that means that there's about 289 in the hopper waiting for approval. Not everybody's going to get approved, of course, but there's going to be a whole lot of companies that will be approved, and there will be a natural shakeout over a certain period of time. We're not too sure how long, but the reckoning right now is maybe 10 will be will be profitable companies and so forth. There are a number of obstacles that have to be addressed. Growing marijuana in a sterile environment is not the easiest thing in the world. It's costly, and there are regulatory compliance issues. You have to keep quality control of your records and a whole raft of different requirements that have to be met. So it needs careful planning in order to be profitable.
Do you think that the majority of companies are engaging in any planning?
You know, I think there's a lot that aren't, and they would do well to seek some advice in terms of strategies. You know, everybody that Deloitte has seen has got their own secret sauce.
Right.
What is going to make them profitable? Some are well thought out, some are less well thought out. Some are targeting doctors and pharmacies and patients and so forth as their market. But as was pointed out, the market right now is pretty finite. You've got 45,000.
Yeah, we were talking about that earlier. A lot of the companies that are in this space are saying, well, there are 40,000 people out there that have licenses, and that's going to go through the roof.
Right.
40,000 people have existing agreements with the government to grow their own stuff.
Right.
And they're all on disability.
Right.
So I don't know how easy it's going to be to get 40,000 people on disability to sign up on a website, to go to a doctor and pay $500 to get their forms, upload them to the website, and then start doing business at a premium price.
Yeah.
It seems to me to be an industry with a very, very limited, at this point, a bottleneck to actually making money. Whereas we've been talking, Paul and I were talking earlier on about the potential for companies to basically say, you know, we don't need to grow it, and we don't need to be the dispensary, but in the middle there has to be someone who fixes the issues of both sides. who gets the dispensary organized so it's not a guy in a tie-dye t-shirt with a nice long beard who's serving you purple head explosion kush, but is instead serving you something that has a brand, that has consistency, that has quality to it. So Paul, where we come to you and talk about the company that you're associated with and how you're trying to move to a space that has a real business to it.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the time. I hail from California, so I thank you. Feel very welcome here in Canada. And I want to, we've heard some interesting comments from the panel members. To start with, I think that what has been highlighted is some points that have been highlighted are things that we've thought a great deal about and are worth repeating. I'm here representing Verde Sciences. Verde Sciences has operations in Canada and in California. Echoing some of the earlier comments, we believe that selling to the marijuana and cannabis industry at this point can be more profitable than the product or than being the grower or the end seller. So I want to echo those comments earlier that there's a lot of ways for this business in operating to make, if you have a good business plan, you set your milestones and you move forward, there's a lot of money being made for people supplying. Much like in California with the gold rush, where you had shovels, and people selling the shovels made a lot more money than people making the gold. They tried to find the gold. Of course, some people were fabulously successful, and that I think has been echoed here. There will be a couple people that are fabulously successful, so how, shareholders, do you pick it out? Well, at Verde Sciences, we took a look at it and we thought about it carefully, and we thought, at this stage, the first thing important is management. And you have to look at the team that you're assembling. And at Verde, we wanted to collect, and we're trying to recruit people out of Canada, California, and around the world that focuses on the science. We believe that the cannabis industry will grow when it becomes more mainstream and less of a dark secret. And instead of the weed industry, it's something that's organized, safe, and is a branded product. And so that starts with people. You need people with a background who can say, like I'm a runner, right? I'm a trained lawyer, banker, I run. I'm not going to start smoking just because I don't smoke. So you want a medical team, and you want people together that can take a cannabis and they can make it more agreeable to the masses. If it's not smoking, but it's in pill form. So you look at the product, the delivery systems, and you look at your business plan to getting there. So for the first step, when you're looking at opportunities, like if you look at a Verde Science, you look at the management. That's your first step. The second thing you have to look at when you're making investments is, what is the business plan? And that was alluded to earlier. And the business plan says, what are our goals? For a pharmaceutical company in this medicinal area, or in the cannabis industry generally, that means milestones will be based on, we'll call it trials for the FDA or Canada Health, and that will be different opportunities in that regard. So you look at the products a company's looking at, and you look at the milestones that they're establishing, which are more important than revenue and earnings. And then the third step is revenue and earnings. So you start by looking at Verde Science, the people, then you look at the business plan and the products and the milestones, and then third, you end with revenue and earnings. I think that there's mention here of a bubble and some other stocks which may be overvalued at this time. And that's because people look at revenue. Revenue and earnings in this situation can be very deceptive metrics. Revenue and earnings are the first thing that can disappear because of a bad crop, because of a government regulation, because of a mistake, because of insiders selling when they shouldn't. So to avoid these pitfalls, you have to look carefully and not rely in an early growth sector on revenue and earnings. You have to look at the people, you have to look at the management, you have to look at the business plan, and you have to look at how that's going to play out. So at Verde Sciences, we've thought that creating indoor growing, for example, is much more predictable. It doesn't rely on pesticides and creates a safer product. So people who want to build these facilities are people we consult with, and we will assist in their effort to do indoor opportunities. So the more people we affiliate with, the more facilities that open, we can grow our business. We can consult on that, but we're not interested in taking a revenue share of the product. That's a risk we're not willing to take. That's that part that creates an uncomfortableness with investors. But what we can predict is we have a certain number of customers we're doing business for, we're growing out certain facilities, we're doing different trials for different delivery methods of the product, we're bringing on these scientists and these people with these backgrounds. And so we have predictable milestones which I think can be beneficial to investors. Much like the comments you've heard here today, the business plan can be very important.
So I'm going to bring it back to James. I want to sort of go through a few companies that are in the sector, if you don't mind, and I'll get your sort of Rorschach test on how you feel those companies stand against mining and tech and biotech and whatnot. I'll try and keep it very simple and quick. Let's talk Creative Edge Nutrition.
Don't know.
It's probably a good thing.
Never heard of it.
Let's talk Supreme Pharmaceuticals.
Oh, okay, let's see. Supreme Pharmaceuticals raised $80 million at half a penny on September 28, 2013 before moving over to the CSE, getting a new name and a new symbol. That's 80 million units at half a penny, which means out of 211 million issued shares, there are 160 million with an average cost basis of 2 cents per share. So, I mean, that's one of those examples where if you're a trader who is lucky enough to participate in early financing, a la the half penny round that came with a 5-cent warrant, then you are going to make some money. However, for long-term investors who are swept up in the hype engendered by a high-flying, lots of volume and a 1,000 to 2,000-fold increase in price, they're not going to understand what happened to them when those 160 million shares decide to leave the party at 7 cents, 6 cents, 5 cents, 4 cents, 3 cents, because they're still up 100, 200, 300, 2,000%.
So I think it's interesting to note that Supreme Pharmaceuticals has, I think, what is it, 325,000 square feet of greenhouse space they've got an option to, or they've leased into, but they don't yet have licensing to actually grow medical marijuana or sell it, and there's no indication that they will get that. Every one of these companies claims it's just a matter of time, but imagine if 300 companies all get their MMPRs. What's going to happen in the marketplace then? We're going to have 300 different Starbucks going out there. It's going to be carnage. So I look at something like Supreme Pharmaceuticals, and I get no end of hate mail for saying it, but I don't see the business proposition right here. If you throw 300,000 square feet of medical marijuana, who are you going to sell it to? Tweed is in a position where they've got only a little bit of marijuana coming out at the moment and having a real struggle getting it out the door. Daniel, maybe you can talk to Tweed a little bit in terms of where you see them at the moment. I just need to get your microphone.
I think the analysis that all the speakers have gone through is correct. You have to be careful if you're buying stock at this point in time. Some of the producers have not really grown a crop yet. So it's hard to see exactly what the value proposition is for some of those types of individuals. Tweed, I think, may be one of those companies where it hasn't grown a crop yet. There are others.
It's tried a few times, I think.
Yeah. So you have to take a look at what the revenue stream is. For many of these folks, the plan to make money is to grow the business to a sufficient level and then bring it to an IPO. It seems like that's the strategy at this point in time. So we have to see, it's very early days. There's a lot of different obstacles, and it's early days. We have to see how the obstacles can be overcome. There's talk about, for example, what are the costs for transportation? Some people say transportation is not that big of a deal. It can be transported in a bonded way for $10. Others find that to be, not viable. So all these issues have to be shaken out. And the comments earlier that were made that you have to surround yourself with good people and good advisors, I think applies doubly in this particular industry.
Jody, I imagine that you had a look at the sector as a pretty general thing. You must see a lot of the mining executives who are suddenly pot princes and have a bit of a snicker in the corner. Have you seen any companies that you think, okay, I can see that working out?
Well, to be honest, I actually haven't been reviewing the companies. I don't know the difference between a stock and a bond. I'm not a financial person. Much better with words myself.
All right, let me rephrase. If you had $10 million in your back pocket and you were going to build a marijuana company, what would you be doing? Would you be growing? Would you be selling? Would you be?
Oh my goodness, probably trying to do it all. Mark Every Marijuana sounds like a nice brand. But what I wanted to comment on about this whole industry, people are already getting marijuana. So that's one of the issues right now is you've got a lot of these companies being promised a marketplace that, yes, it does exist. There is a demand for marijuana, medical and recreational / preventative use, but they're already getting their marijuana. Getting it from their own gardens, or they're getting it from a dispensary, or they're getting it from their teenage son who sells it to his friends at high school. I mean, even where marijuana is punishable by death, people find ways to get it. It's inside prisons. I can tell you Mark's been offered pot a lot of times. He's always said no. But when it comes to pot and these new businesses, they're being promised a market that's already being served. So how do these companies make the money that they've been promised? Well, at this point, the Conservative government and Health Canada have created a system that's meant to eliminate all home gardens, which will technically eliminate patients' own grows, of course, but dispensaries. Dispensaries rely heavily on legal medical marijuana being grown, perhaps over a limit, but better than getting it from gangsters. So again, the market is already being served. The only way to make money as a new business in this marijuana field is to advocate for a bigger marketplace, which means legalization for all, but also to offer something that people can't get elsewhere. The only way to succeed as a business in any way is to offer your customers something they want, or to give them an experience that's enhanced, or give them incentive in some way. So I would have to say, lower the prices. We're looking at marijuana still being at $10 a gram here, or maybe 7 or 8. But Uruguay just legalized it with a federal program that's at less than $1 a gram. And when you consider cigarettes, tobacco is an enormous industry. If you take a pack of cigarettes, that's about $10 or so. That's about 20 smokes. Let's say it's about an ounce of tobacco in a pack of cigarettes. Well, again, that's a lot of tax. So really that plant matter is just a couple pennies worth when you add on the price, when you sell it in retail. So tobacco makes people filthy rich. There's huge companies, there's small companies, there's little organic, there's gigantic mass-produced, and there's billions of dollars, trillions maybe even, to be made in packaging, advertising, selling it, transport, everything to do with it. So when you consider marijuana, it should not be a $200 pack of smokes, which is the current prohibition price. It should be $10, which means a gram should be a couple pennies, which means companies who want to make all this money with first the medical market, and then eventually, probably with Trudeau and the Liberal Party, a legal adult market. And the way to do that is to offer lower prices, better quality, find out who the good growers and activists are and who've been doing it all these years, because they'll tell you how to do it right. And don't just jump into it and think it's easy to grow weed, because trust me, marijuana smokers in this country have very, very high standards, and the only way to meet that is to reach out to them and find out what they're doing right.
I've actually been waiting for one company to jump up and say, you know what, actually we are going to use Hells Angels for our grow up, because, you know, first of all, we're taking them off the street, second of all, who else knows how to do this?
Well, prohibition of alcohol demonstrates that those who cash in on the booze while it's illegal are well situated to do properly in the real market.
So we've got a couple of minutes left. What I want to do is to just go down the line and give each of you 30 seconds. And if you know of a company that you think is doing it right, or several companies, feel free to give them a pitch here. We've actually got, I think, 4 companies pitching after this. And I actually like the fact that they're all non-focused on growing. They're not trying to be bicycle club members. They're working in hemp, they're working in vending machines, which I'm not such a big fan of as a play, but you know, they'll get into why it's good. There's events based around medical marijuana, and these are all companies that I think are adding value to something that could be like wheat in 6 months' time. So let's just go, James, 30 seconds to wrap it up. What do you think is great about the sector?
The best looking business plan I've seen yet involves a company called THC Bank. It focuses on protecting and preserving the genetic integrity of various strains of marijuana for growers, for medical marijuana users, and they are, they're basically taking a genetic map of your favorite strain. If you're a recreational user, of course they don't service recreational users, but for medical marijuana users who require very specific configurations of the various strains to achieve certain effects with serious medical conditions, these guys are going to provide those strains to their favorite growers. So it's one of those.
Put your money where your mouth is, and get it fully legal because there are people still going to prison. So when you're looking at companies to invest in and support, ask them just kindly, will you do something or anything to help end the arrest of recreational users or medical users too? Because those companies also should be allowing for home grows. The current program that eliminates home growing, I think that's unfair and unjust. In a truly free market, you allow people to choose where they want to get it, from the big mass producer to the little farmer's market to the dispensary to grandma's garden. You should be able to get it from anywhere, and the government should have a shot too, but they don't do very well when they go into business, so I wouldn't recommend them.
Daniel?
If it's fair to say that there is reason for caution, it's also fair to say that there have been a number of companies that are apparently making money at this point in time, Tweed being one of them. Seems to have been successful by the measure of its cap as a result of the initial public offering. There are other companies like Salvation Botanical that are providing services such as lab services and so forth. That is one other area within which you can make money, is provide the services to this particular industry. We've assisted maybe 4 out of 5 of the licensed producers, and in order to be profitable, you have to have the right advice in terms of getting the tax and the corporate and this scientific research and experimental development credits and incentives program and assisting you if you want to go public. Those are my thoughts.
Paul, I'm guessing you know at least one company that you would say is doing it right?
I think that because this is an investor conference, I want to echo the comments that in this day and age, investors do flock to corporations which have strong corporate governance and corporations do serve a role in the public. So companies that are committed to doing no harm, companies that are committed to community, is an important consideration, and that goes to how they run the business, what they do with the resources and the donations that they do make. So I think that I want to echo the comments made earlier, that the corporate governance and the corporate mission of a corporation is very important. The second thing I'd like to point out is there's a lot of people who are in the business, but if you buy the stock, yes, they could be a lab company, and they could be a grower, but these things are very predictable growers, and these are very predictable revenue streams, and as a stock, it's not exciting. Companies that do $1 million year over year don't grow. It's a no multiple stock. It may be trading at 10 cents, 20 cents, $2, but it's not going to grow without a multiple. So when you look at a stock investment, you look at the corporate governance, you look at the mission of the company, and then if you want the stock to go up, you have to look to see if there's a growth potential to the revenue. And the reason Verde Science fits within that is, if you think about it, you've heard reference to the tobacco companies. The tobacco companies and the pharmaceutical companies are going to stay out of this one for a while. They're going to let a year or two, they're going to let 100 pharmaceutical companies and all these companies run their course. And the minute a company then has a product or a brand that's appealing to the public, the tobacco and the pharmaceutical companies will pay a huge number for it. You read about mergers and acquisitions every day in the newspaper, but those acquisitions aren't for $10 million, $20 million acquisitions. It's like it's $19 billion acquisitions, $5 billion acquisitions, 200 million acquisitions. So right now we're in the early stages. There's 100 or 200 runners in the race. We don't know who's going to win, but I will tell you this. A year or 2 years from now, the ones that have a pharmaceutical grade product, the ones that are market leaders with a brand, those two criteria will be bought by large pharmaceutical companies, will be bought by tobacco companies for big numbers. So if you're looking at your investment, consider your exit strategy, look at your growth rate, look at your corporate governance, and it will dictate where you go. And I think that Verde Science fits within that parameter.
Thank you everyone for coming. I'm going to just say that one of the presenters coming after us is Naturally Splendid, which is a company that's in my top 5 of medical marijuana companies that actually have a business plan. It hasn't been very exciting for investors to this point, because largely the medical marijuana investor space has been dominated by day traders and people who really want to own a weed company. But it is one company out of at least 5 that I know of that I think is a good long-term investment, has a real strategy behind it, and is delivering on its strategy. And there's probably someone in the crowd who has at least a handful of the products that they've been handing out. So stick around for them. Thank you to James, Jody, Daniel, Paul for coming out. Thank you for you guys for listening. And if you want more information, look out for my daily medical marijuana mood kickings, updates on stockhouse.com and my newsletter and everywhere else here. Thank you very much. And Jody will be handing out free samples later on.
Come on down to the table.